voted to leave. You know, they'll be chanting, they had it planned, I saw it on Twitter. Hey, hey, Theresa May, let the people have their say. I mean, honestly, this is the intelligence, to speak to your point, intelligence levels have declined significantly, and obviously, all the lovies will be out there. Bob Geldof, ooh. Brian Cox, ooh. Matt Lucas, the great bold weirdo. Hey, hey, Bob, Brian and Matt, we already voted, you stupid Gary Lineker, the crisp salesman, paid for by the taxpayer, don't you just love that? He's obviously in on the action, as is every other rich tax-avoiding urbanite with no risk of ever having to use state schooling or the NHS. Because you will know, as well as I know as a mum of 3 children under 14, those are the places that the rubber hits the road. If you load a country with 50,000 people a year, and that's an underestimate massively in my personal experience with trucks through Calais, they sure as hell aren't going to be causing a queue at the exclusive Greycoat school just up the road, or at London Bridge Private Hospital. And rather than acknowledge our schools and our health service are collapsing under the deluge, what do we prefer to do? We blame our elderly, contributing all their lives, seldom causing bother, the real troopers of this nation, and yet held up every time as the reason the NHS is in crisis. Because old people are living longer, they say over and over. Yes, they are. But they're not living as bloody long as the 50,000 Moroccans who arrived last week, are they? Us very reasonable British types only have as many kids as we can fit into a reasonably priced car, not a bus. A GP got in touch with me. He was sick of the silencing. He told me that he feels under pressure by his surgery. He can't speak out because of his work colleagues. That he's under pressure to write sick notes for migrants. That they bombard the surgery trying to work the system. And if they can't get a sick note from him, they'll shop around at the surgery for another appointment until they can get the sick note they need. And they know which doctors will even write them a sick note to get them out of sitting the British citizenship test. And that comes from a doctor inside who can't speak out because he'll be removed from his profession. On that note, actually, to those people who have failed to show up to speak today, I understand that we get death threats, but if you're not actually dead, then there is still a requirement for you to show up. People call me a massive Islamophobe. I embrace that, although I am only 9 stone 8. But my own Islamophobia came about when 2 jihadis plotted to behead me as a wedding gift to each other. One lady, I think she's a Brit. She asked for my head on a plate as proof of her new husband's love. She bought him a hunting knife and a dummy to practice on, which he duly did. And they were due to come and get my head. Some police officers dressed in black clothing turned up at my house one night, put an alarm in the top of my house, which I was to run up to, shake, if I needed assistance from the local constabulary. And as they left my house, they told me not to worry. So I don't, and I live again to fight another day. But the reality for those individuals who head to the UK is not some kind of chaos or confusion. That's a myth perpetuated by the mainstream. They head for landing centres that they know of through their network of contacts that are shared on their mobile phones. Friendly places that will accommodate them, help them get their little feet under the table, help them access the benefit, where you can get paid cash in hand, which doctor will write you the sick notes. They are signposting illegal immigrants how to work this country, and that's all happening right under our noses, and my nose is big enough to know it. Sometimes the cover-up falls apart. to the point that even the mainstream media struggle with the lies that it's telling. And Grenfell Tower was a perfect example of this. It is a terrible tragedy, nobody is dismissing that. But good Lord, have we not heard enough about Grenfell Tower? Could we hear any more about Grenfell Tower? Channel 4 News just can't get enough of it. I was there through the night as that tower burned. I was there next morning as it smouldered, and I was in conversation with a lady who lived in the block of flats directly opposite, who I felt incredibly sorry for. She was unsure of what to do for the best for herself and her child, and she was watching people burn. It is a tragedy, but it is also a huge lie. The authorities say that 72 people died, 72. You cannot look at that place, such as it is, without knowing that is not true. 129 apartments, massive subletting, adverts for subletting that I have. 10 people, 12 people, huge overcrowding, designed for 600. Locals say twice that number lived on that block, and more were there at that time because it was Ramadan. I mean, who knows what started a fire with open oil fires at Ramadan? Who could say? But the locals say that more than 200 people never made it out. Invisible people, never officially here, so never officially alive or dead. And standing with them, good people, really traumatised by what they'd seen. That was just their honest recollection. At least 200 were missing. Grenfell was stuffed to the rafters with illegals and invisibles, a microcosm of its own, one of the landing bases for new arrivals in the UK, working the system, finding ways to make money from a government easy with taxpayers' cash. As evidenced, in fact, by the massive fraud in the aftermath, which hasn't been spoken about much either, really. £500,000 of public money was fraudulently claimed by people pretending to be victims of the Grenfell Tower fire, and just £1,000 has been recovered. The Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed that much of the money lost may never be returned to Kensington and Chelsea Council, and charities that were duped into handing out the financial support to fake survivors. We heard endless accounts of suffering on Channel 4, and of course, Meghan Markle's sparkle pants turned up with a cookbook. How handy. Love that. But I met a little family at a hotel I was staying in on the South Bank, Park Plaza. It's quite a nice hotel. They were having a lovely time living there, actually, and were really, really grateful. They had free accommodation, free food, use of the sauna facilities, and vouchers for presents and clothes. And I asked them if they'd ever been interviewed by the media. They said they had talked to the media, but they weren't interested in talking to them because they had no complaints and were having a nice time. And there was a sort of sweetness about it because they were so grateful, and I was happy that they were safe, but equally it shows the duplicity of our media, that they will not tell maybe other sides of a story than the agenda that they're looking to follow. And it's a hotel that many of us, certainly myself, couldn't afford to put my family in for a week. And that imbalance is what we see constantly in this country, I think. Those recently arrived are somehow always at the front of the queue, and our elderly and our taxpayers are elbowed to the back, last in line for school places or on endless wait lists for surgery. I've met so many mums, and they email me, you know, to say that they didn't get their first or second or third place for their children, and they're in tears. What shall I do? How do I change this? I get emails from 80-year-old people, and it might be the first email they've typed because of the damn thing called the internet that makes no sense. And they say that they will be glad when their time is up here in the UK because they do not want to live to see their country fall. Yeah. And those are really, really hard emails to get. But you don't have to look too far to see what this country could be like. I recently returned from Poland, where I was annoying lefties, And it's a hobby. Poland has a policy of zero illegal immigration. It's now officially the safest place in the whole of Europe to be a woman, and it has had zero terrorist attacks. The Christian faith is front and centre. There are no mosques to be seen or to speak of. And the Polish culture, I know, right? And the Polish culture is strong and celebrated, and the Law and Order Party are in power, delivering on their manifesto promise of zero illegal immigration. And one strange thing happened to me while I was there. I saw some girls just in their shorts and t-shirts cycling on bikes, and it was like 8:30 at night. It was still light. And I was struck. Girls on bikes, 8:30. And I was looking around, and there was something odd about it. And I realised what was upsetting or troubling me was I felt the need to go and look after them or something motherly. And it was the fact they had not a care in the world. And what upset me about that was not that they had not a care of the world, because that's a perfect thing, is that I noticed. I was alarmed for them. I was anxious because I come from the UK where that couldn't happen. And that's a really striking sign, I think, of how far this country has fallen. They've not bought into mandatory multiculturalism. They've defied Merkel on migrant quotas, and they've defended their borders beautifully. When the Saudis rang the Law and Order Party, as folklore has it, to ask if they could build a mosque in the city of Warsaw, the Law and Order Party told the Saudis to get back in touch when they could build a cathedral in Dubai. I've got to a point now where I don't care if that story is true or not. I just love it all the same. And it's this attitude of smart defiance that seems necessary to protect one's citizens. Smart defiance. You see it with Matteo Salvini refusing to accept the NGO ferry boats across the Med, bringing half of Libya to Europe. No to the boats. You see it in Hungary, where Orban said no to Merkel's migrant quota, and where he's just recently banned gender studies, which I love. I love. And you see it in Austria too, where they've said no to the burqa, and they will fine you if you're caught wearing one. And in Sweden too, and I've spent some time there in those suburbs, where I was told to go suck my mum. I politely declined. And the Swedish Democrats have said no to migrant violence and no to the rape of white girls. And in the UK, actually, where 17.4 million people said no to the EU, and I will be out there defending that later today in my wig as Tony O'Brien. No, I will not be silenced either. Smart defiance. You know, we're not alone, even though we feel it sometimes, surrounded by the madness of our time. We are part of a much larger family that is growing across Europe, prepared to show smart defiance and say no. And of course we see it in America, where the lines for Trump's rallies reach for miles, and the American economy is booming. And I will be over there in a couple of weeks' time campaigning against Mad Maxine Waters, and we will try and win that victory. Trump will take 2020. There is hope. And that's where you come in, all of you. You don't have to, we don't have to watch this country fall. We can make a difference.
We will make America great again.